Story 3. I was just a few hours from home when the storm hit. Rain poured down in sheets, turning the road into a river, and every few seconds lightning would flash, momentarily blinding me. I was barely making out the lines on the road when my headlights caught a sign up ahead, Restia's Motel vacancy. The sign glowed in dim, red letters against the downpour, and I figured that it was better to wait out the storm than to keep pushing on in these conditions. The parking lot was empty, except for an old, battered station wagon parked near the back. The lobby was small and dimly lit, just a narrow room with a counter, a few sad-looking plants, and some dusty magazines piled on a side table. The man behind the counter looked up as I walked in. He was tall and thin, with deep-set eyes that seemed just a little too intense for someone working the late shift at a roadside motel. I asked for a room, and he handed me a key for room 3. As I was about to leave, he said, almost too casually, just one thing. Keep your curtains closed tonight, he didn't explain, and his face remained expressionless as he handed me the key. I shrugged it off as I walked out into the rain, pulling my jacket up over my head. The room was only a few doors down, and I fumbled with the key, dripping water everywhere, as I finally got the door open. The room was about what I expected, plain, almost bare, with faded wallpaper and a sagging bed in the middle of the room. I turned on the lamp by the bed and noticed a strange scent in the air, a mix of mildew and something metallic. It wasn't overpowering, but it was enough to set me on edge. I tossed my bag on the chair and sat down, still thinking about the clerk's strange instruction. Keep your curtains closed tonight. It was an odd thing to say, but maybe he was just trying to save me from the sight of the storm raging outside. I decided to shake it off and turned on the TV, flipping through static-filled channels until I found one that sort of came through. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't quite relax. It was sometime around midnight when I heard a soft, dragging sound, like something scraping against the ground. I muted the TV and listened, holding my breath. The sound came again, a little louder this time, and it was moving, slowly but steadily, past my door. I felt an uncomfortable prickling on the back of my neck. The sound was rhythmic, steady, like someone dragging a heavy object right outside my room. I told myself it was probably the wind blowing debris around, or maybe someone moving luggage in the rain, though who would be out at this hour, I had no idea. Still, the sound continued, moving past my door, stopping just short of the window. My skin prickled, and I stayed frozen in place, ears straining to hear any other noise. But the dragging sound stopped as suddenly as it had started. Despite myself, I remembered the clerk's words. Keep the curtains closed. But curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself inching toward the window. My hand trembled as I reached for the edge of the curtain, and slowly, I pulled it back just a little, peeking through the narrow gap. Outside, barely visible in the shadows cast by the flickering lights of the motel sign, I saw a figure crouch low to the ground, half hidden by the rain. It wasn't moving, just huddled there near the window of room 2, its back turned to me. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But every time lightning flashed, I could only catch glimpses, like someone crouching low, almost like an animal. My heart pounded, and I let the curtain fall back into place, suddenly very aware of how thin the walls were between us. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, maybe even just a trick of the light, but there was something deeply unsettling about the way it had just been. Waiting, I climbed into bed, keeping the lamp on, hoping the light would keep whatever was at bay. It was maybe an hour later, just as I was drifting off to sleep, that the noises began again. This time it was a scratching sound, soft but insistent, like fingernails scraping against wood. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it was coming from my door, like someone tracing their fingers over the frame, feeling their way around. The scratching continued, slow, deliberate, pausing now and then before starting up again, each sound dragging out my anxiety bit by bit. And then it stopped. Silence fell over the room, so thick I could almost feel it pressing down on me. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, afraid to move or even breathe too loudly. But just as I was starting to think it was over, the scratching picked up again, this time coming from the window. The fear was building up inside me, nearly suffocating. Against every ounce of instinct, I got up and tiptoed toward the window, curiosity and dread warring within me. I reached for the curtain, my hand barely touching the edge of the fabric, when a heavy, metallic banging noise echoed from the hallway outside, almost like someone slamming a pipe against the wall. The sound was so sudden and so loud that I stumbled back, my heart racing. I wasn't about to stick around to see what else might happen. I grabbed my bag and was halfway to the door when I heard something that stopped me cold, a faint whisper, just on the other side of the door. It was so quiet I could barely make it out, but the tone was unmistakable, filled with a slow, deliberate malice. It sounded like someone repeating the same phrase, over and over, too quiet to fully understand. My hand hovered over the doorknob, and for the first time I felt real, paralyzing fear. I pressed my ear against the door, barely breathing, trying to make out the words. And then, in a voice as soft as silk, I heard, "Come outside, come outside." My blood turned to ice. I backed away from the door, not daring to make a sound, desperately hoping that whatever was out there would leave. But the whispering continued, and with each repetition, the voice grew slightly louder, a sickening, taunting invitation that made my skin crawl. I knew I couldn't stay in that room. I was practically holding my breath as I crept toward the bathroom, planning to hide there and maybe find a way to call for help. But as I reached the bathroom door, I stopped, catching sight of something that made my stomach drop. There, on the carpet, just beneath the door, I could see a shadow, a thin, stretched-out figure standing perfectly still right outside my room. My mind raced, panic clawing its way up my throat. I didn't want to see what was casting that shadow, didn't want to know who or what was out there. But just as I turned to lock myself in the bathroom, the shadow shifted, moving slowly toward the door, inching closer and closer to the gap beneath it. I was done. I didn't care about the rain, the darkness, or anything else. I threw open the bathroom window, not even thinking about the consequences, and climbed out into the storm, slipping and stumbling through the mud as I ran toward my car. I didn't look back, didn't even think to see if anyone was following me. I just jumped into the driver's seat, turned the key, and sped out of there, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. As I pulled back onto the main road, the motel disappeared into the night, swallowed up by the rain. But the memory of that whisper stayed with me, haunting my mind even as the miles passed and dawn broke over the horizon. And to this day I can still hear it sometimes, that faint, eerie voice lingering at the edges of my thoughts, inviting, coaxing, calling me back to that godforsaken place.